Hey, greetings everyone. Today I want to give you a little presentation on how I construct the gazebo. What we're looking at here is the site for the gazebo. It's down on a bit of an incline, back from the house a good distance. The land wasn't really usable for much else, so it seemed like the perfect spot for it. First thing I did was locate the center of it and drove a stake down into the ground. It's a 12-foot gazebo, so then I took a tape measure and came out 6 feet from that stake and used some marker paint to mark the perimeter of where the thing was going to sit, just to make sure it was a good siding for it, and I had it exactly in the very spot I wanted it to be, because obviously once you start construction it's a little bit tough to move it. Anyway, I used this 12-inch auger on the back of this tractor to bore the holes for the concrete piers that it was going to sit on. Since this thing's sitting on an incline, you can't just put it on the ground. I had to use the concrete piers to present a level surface for it. Here we can see I went down about 24 inches for each of the holes, so I'm going to make sure that we're down below the frost line. If you're above the frost line, the ground's going to heave up and you're going to have a real mess on your hands. And just looking up the hill here, you can see the distance from the house. It's just far enough away where it gives you a nice little place to come out and sit, get away from it all. Here I've poured the center pier. That pink line went across there is my level line, so you can see what the slope of the land is. Just using 12-inch sonotubes there, and I got some stakes to hold it in place. Everything was mixed by hand using this probably, I don't know, 30, 40, 50-year-old concrete mixer that my buddy gave me. It used to be his father-in-law's. I'm also using the high-strength concrete here. Probably wasn't necessary, but for an extra $1 a bag, yeah, I figure it's a good investment. Just getting another view, another angle. And there's a close-up. One problem you have with the concrete is, as it dries, it's going to shrink. So I probably lost, I don't know, maybe up to a 1/4 inch in height. And of course, the key with these piers is they all pretty much have to be level. Otherwise, your gazebo is not going to be sitting level, or you're going to have to do some shimming. So I put a lot of care into trying to make sure that the piers all came out about the same height. And looking up the hill. Okay, here's the cupola that I had gone ahead and stained. And here is the actual kit as it starting to unpack it. It came on one pallet, has some shrink wrap plastic over top of it. No, the propane tank didn't come with it. You can see it's really nice quality wood. It's all #1 southern pine, no knots at all. It's all very straight, very nice looking wood. And I went ahead and went with the cedar roof, which makes, I thought, a very nice finished product. It really wasn't that much more expensive. They've been apparently doing this for quite a time, because it was amazing how they got this all packed so tightly and fit on that one pallet there. Okay, we're back down to the site. I've poured the first 2 piers on the perimeter there just to set the first piece of decking on there. There's 8 pieces, pie slices, to the deck itself. And I'm checking my level, which was pretty good for the first ones. The real key was to try to figure out where these outer piers were going to go. Probably if I would have been smart, I'd have just built a template using some 2x4s and then drop the plumb line down. Instead, what I did was I would basically do it section by section. I would put the piece of pie here, and then take and calculate where the next pier would go and pour that, and so on until I was finished. In the end, it actually came out pretty good. I was only off by maybe 2 inches. And you can see that square cut out there through the decking. That's where the 4x4 post that holds the roof up is going to fit down. And I tried to center everything on the pier so that you have good weight distribution. You can also see here I put some metal straps down into the concrete, and I would use those to fasten the decking down, just to keep it from blowing away in any high winds, and we do get hurricanes around here. And here you can see I'm making some progress. I've got 4 of the perimeter on now, so essentially about the halfway mark. Once again, the key was to try to keep these all level, and I did that with strings and line levels to the top of the sonotubes. Here on the left you can kind of see how much shrinkage we had there when the concrete dried. So I tried to factor that in when I set the sonotubes. Making some more progress, checking my level. And this was in August, and it was really hot. It was like 100 degrees that particular summer of 2012, so it was not exactly pleasant working out there. One of the mistakes I made, you can see the outside of the concrete piers are kind of pitted. I don't think I waited long enough for that concrete to set before I started pulling those sonotubes off. But it did impact the strength, but did make them a little bit unsightly. I actually went back and took some cement mix and sort of parsed over the top of those to make them a little less unattractive. Here I decided to actually drag the pallet down into the yard where I could work close to the construction site as opposed to hauling that stuff down there one by one. And I just used a tractor to drag it through the yard. Made a little bit of a mess in the grass, but it was pretty easily repaired. Here you can see I've got the pieces of the pie set out there. And once again, I'm just using these to construct the piers as I go by putting the pieces in place and then figure out where the next pier is supposed to fit. And there you can see I used some concrete blocks to hold that one piece up. And then I just dropped the line down where that post sat into that pie section to figure out where my center of the hole was going to be. And these other stakes sitting here are my approximate locations for future piers. Now we're back up on the driveway. I'm just getting these roof sections set up. At this point in time, I was planning to stain the roof using this Australian timber oak or timber oil from Lowe's. It's a Cabot product. I decided that was going to be used on the cedar roof. It also seemed to be the product that's going to hold up best. I didn't really want to use a water-based product for up on that roof. I prefer not to have to go up and restain this every couple of years. I wanted to do it once and have it hopefully last for a decade or so. I didn't really want the cedar to turn that natural gray. I don't think it's very attractive personally. And I had some buckets for paving the driveway, and those essentially are my things I'm going to use to hold the roofing sections up off the ground while I work on them. Here I was trying to decide on some colors for the wood of the gazebo. I wasn't sure if I just wanted to go with a basic white or not, so I tried some different color samples. Okay, making some more progress here. Another pier has been put in. It was a bit of a pain trying to drill those holes by myself. It's definitely nice if you have a helper there. You also see here I switched to an 8-inch bore because what was happening was I was using that 12-inch bore. It was making the hole too big, so I just went ahead and used this 12-inch or 8-inch bore to go down. Then I would use this hand hole digger over here to finish the hole out, and just seemed to work a lot better in the long run. A little bit more extra work, but seemed to be the way to go. Here you can see on this pier I got a little better timing as far as peeling that sonotube off. The concrete's a little bit smoother. Up here you can see how rough it is, and here I started to do some parging just because I didn't want that unsightly concrete being visible in the future. And we're making progress. Just 2 more sections to go. And there we have all the concrete in. Now you can see these ones on the bottom were up out of the ground, probably at least a good 2 feet. I forget how much concrete I used. I think these ones down at the bottom were probably using 4 80-pound sacks. And they're starting to disassemble the pallet so we could get some staining started. and I had all the bags of Sackfrete brought in on a pallet from the building supply store. Made it a little bit easier for me trying to get in and pick that stuff up and handle it in the truck and unload it. Just didn't seem worth the while. I went ahead and paid him the $35 delivery fee. Money well spent. Just a close-up of that concrete on the sonotube there. Starting to peel the concrete off the tube. There's the whole deck just roughed out, sitting on the concrete piers. So I actually did a pretty good job getting those piers into the right position. Of course, if it would have been a flat piece of ground, it would have been much, much easier to do. And from a different angle, and from yet another different angle, you can see how nicely that fits together. And we have some unslightly ugly concrete to fix up there. Okay. Just looking down. What they did when they built these, they left out two sections of decking on each piece, and that's how you can get down and bolt these two sections together, both here and in the back. And then you just come and put the decking piece in and screw them in yourself. The one thing I didn't like about this particular kit, they did such a nice job on everything else, and then on the decking they used a freaking air gun to drive nails down through this thing instead of just using some decent stainless steel screws. So I wasn't very impressed with that at all. Here I am standing up on the deck, looking deck. And I'm starting to line some blocks up down here because I was looking at some way I wanted to put stones underneath here just to control the weeds and to keep the vermin out from there. I don't want snakes and animals making a home into there. And it also makes a nice finish touch since you're going to be able to see into there from the lower side, having some nice looking stones. And these retaining block walls from Lowe's seem to be the way to go. I had them laying around. Just rough fitting everything right now, just see if that's the way I wanted to go. Okay, now it's time to start staining. I initially thought I was going to use this stain I was going to use on the roof and everything, but I later decided it just didn't really go on to the pine that well. So I decided to go with a multi-color approach, and I went ahead and used this Olympic water-based stain on the decking. And I also went ahead and decided to use the white on the railing. I just have this thing up there to get an eyeball on how it's going to look. But after I got into it, I wasn't sure if I wanted to use that brown, so I went out and got a couple cans of sample paint stain, and as you can see here, I'm doing a little bit of testing, trying to compare the white rail with the color on the cupola of the roof with the decking. Still can't make up my mind. I'm not very good with deciding about which colors to use. Wish I had an interior designer. Okay, I did the staining of the posts in the basement on the sawhorses. Did everything with a brush. Just keep them inside so I could work at night. Keeps the bugs off them too. Anyway, here's the color I finally decided to go with the deck. I decided to go back to a Cabot oil-based stain. And this is a brown, actually the brown I use in my one shed. It was a bit of a pain because, as you know, I did that one section in that brown, so I had to go and get some paint stripper and strip all that off. But you see the overspray in these piers. I actually went out and got myself an airless paint gun for about $100. And it turned out to be a big time saver. Used quite a bit more stain, but for the amount of time I saved, it was well worth it. And here you can see it's still pretty wet. It actually dries much darker. I'm not too worried about the overspray on the concrete because I'm going to fix that later and I'll show you how. But this Cabot stain has really nice penetration. And here's what I decided to do with the concrete piers. I wanted to go ahead and use a dark brown. This is a masonry paint. And actually I'm using two different colors here. This sort of matches the color I had on the underside of my deck up on the house. If you want to try to keep your color palette very simple and consistent throughout your property, make things look much nicer. Once again, just getting an idea if that's the way I want to go. And some different angles. And here's that one piece extra work I made for myself. I still haven't stripped that off of there. And you can see I've got a screw there in the center of the concrete pier, basically marked my true center. Actually, backing up here, you can see this one piece, the pieces that were left out, I went ahead and decided to stain those that brown. I'm going to actually have a two-tone deck. I thought it would make a nice accent, a nice touch. And here I've taken all the piers and I've painted these. I actually used the airless spray gun. I was able to do this whole thing in about 10 minutes. And that was a big time saver over using a brush, especially with the porousness of that concrete. I think I hit them twice. I initially threw that concrete or that cardboard down the ground because I feared there was going to be some dirt kicking up from the sprayer, but turned out not to be a problem. But that definitely improves the appearance of the whole project. Just takes that ugly white concrete away and gives it a nice consistent color, and also that dark brown will make it sort of hide itself, obscure it into the background. Once again, just some different angles. Now here I've started to set the border and throw the stone in. I actually went ahead and used this red stone instead of the blue stone. It's a little bit more expensive, but not that much considering the overall cost of the project, and makes a really nice, pretty finished project. Then I would backfill the dirt up against these retaining wall blocks, hold them in place. And the blocks didn't quite fill that gap between the two piers, so I actually took a brick and sort of used that as a center divider. Made them fit just right. And here you can see I also stained the underside of the deck since it would be visible from the lower. And it also keeps it from rotting or getting fungus or mold or mildew on it over time. Just some different angles. There's most of it all filled in with the stone. Starting to do a bit of landscape around there, level out the ground a little bit with the tractor. Okay, it's time to set the decks down. These things are actually pretty heavy. Up to this point, I've done this work all by myself, absolutely no help whatsoever. You actually see, at least in my opinion, this Piers, that dark brown with that lighter brown on the decking. Looks really nice, especially with that red stone underneath. And there's all the pieces down. They all fit pretty good. No major complaints there. I've got the C-clamps out. I use the C-clamps to hold the two different pieces together while I would drill a hole through and run the bolt from joist to joist. You can see everything lines up pretty nicely. Here you can see the bolts going through different joists. It's all galvanized hardware. The hardware they sent with the kit was not galvanized. It was simply zinc plated, so I was a little bit irritated by that. And I just went out to the hardware store and bought myself some coated fasteners. It's just not worth putting something that's going to rust. Such an expensive, pretty project to cut corners like that. I was really disgusted with the manufacturer. And once again, standing up on top of the deck, looking down over the highest part there out into the woods. Awfully beautiful sight, in my opinion. Here's underneath to show some detail. Here's the concrete pier, and this metal that anchor I put into the concrete pier has been bent up, and I'm using some of this Simpson's high strength fasteners here with the star head to hold this on. It's also identical on the other side. So if we get some hurricane force winds through here, I'm expecting the gazebo will not move. Here you can see up underneath, just see some detail. It's actually very pretty architecturally, in my opinion. And it's just amazing all the tools one needs to do a project like this. You can see some detail in the blocks and the brick. Pretty simple, once again using materials on hand. Those bricks are actually left over from the house construction many years ago. Okay, I've got one section of the railing stained white. That's actually Olympic solid white stain sitting up on the deck, just to get an idea how it's going to look. And here I'm staining those pieces. They're going to fit into the deck, the ones that were left out, so you can do the bolting together. And that's a Oxford Brown Olympic solid stain. It's what I use on the other side of the deck to sort of make the wood blend into the background. And while I was at it, and while I had the airless gun out, I just decided to go ahead and do these Adirondack chairs that I had purchased a few years ago from some Amish folks here, some local Amish people. They're going to go on to the gazebo, so once again we're tying all the colors together. And you can see what a nice job that airless spray gun did. I had done one of these chairs by hand with a brush. It probably took me 2 hours. That air gun, it took me probably 5 to 6 minutes. Once again, just seeing what the future is going to hold for us here. Things starting to come together. Here you can see I've started to put these extra pieces in. And I went ahead and decided to use stainless steel screws. They provided galvanized screws with the kit. I really just didn't like that. Since these are going to be visible on the top, I just went out and spent a few extra dollars, got the stainless screws. I'm spending this much money and this much time on a project. Why cut corners? Just doesn't make sense to me. And here's a little problem I had. These two joists weren't quite fitting tight together. So I just tightened the bolts down, and in the process I split the joist. So I went ahead and took a piece of 3/4 inch plywood and used some adhesive and nailed it on there just to give a little bit extra strength. Probably wasn't necessary, but I just tend to overdo things. And here we're looking down the deck with all the pieces on. I think this dark brown accent pieces definitely did the trick. Makes it very attractive. Just taking looks at different angles here. Okay, it's time to paint these, and to do this by hand would just take a month of Sundays. So I threw some plastic drop cloths down over the deck to protect it and use that as the place to do my painting. It really wasn't any other flat surface, and I didn't want to kill the grass, so it seemed like the ideal working place. Once again, using that airless spray gun. And here's some of the cornice pieces. Kind of sacrificed the grass here a little bit. And that is, once again, the Olympic solid white stain, exterior stain. A lot of pieces in this kit to make this thing go together. Here I've brought the 4x4 posts out and set them into the holes. I kept that plastic down there because I didn't want to get any construction damage to the deck. And looking down the hill, also got the land leveled out a little bit. And that tree is going to be moved later because it's right where the walk onto the deck is at. And down on the bottom of the hill. And looking up at the house, just some different perspective shots. Had the pressure washer out there because the kit had been sitting around for a year. I had the Hurricane Irene in 2012, so it sort of got put on hold. I want to make sure everything was nice and clean before I put the stain on there. The cedar had already started to change color, so I got some wood brightener out, took it back to its natural state. This is for the top pagoda section of the roof. Handy dandy sawhorses. And here you can see I've started to stain using that Australian timber oil. Once again, this was all sprayed through the airless sprayer, saving me countless hours of time and making for a nice finished product as well. Down here you can see I put plastic up over the gazebo just to keep any overspray from getting onto that white. And here I started to spray the larger sections of roof. And I actually skipped over the part where I put up all the different railing pieces here. But that's just a matter of going one by one and using some levels to try to keep everything level. It did take quite a bit of pulling and tugging to get the whole thing squared and level and plumb. But came together pretty nicely overall. You can see the rails are starting to go in. And the roof sections are getting stained. Just moving along. And I brought these inside to keep them out of the weather until I needed them. Continuing to stain the roof sections. Actually, I had to do the first the one side, then the other side, so it did take a bit of time. Plus, there's 8 of these, and then 8 for the pagoda roof. Quite a bit of surface. And then these are the ridge caps, so I had to stain all of those. That was a lot of work there. And here I started digging out the front because I wanted to put a landing in there, so essentially you could just walk right from the grass up onto the gazebo. It'd be a smooth roll-on. You wouldn't have to step up there and have a trip hazard. Here's trees starting to go in. There's going to be 2 red maples on either side. This one is new, and the one in the back here is the one that I moved from the front. And here we've used that same retaining wall block to do a perimeter to hold the mulch in. I also put this wire cage. It's nothing more than concrete mesh, reinforcing mesh, because the deer tend to like to try to destroy these red maple trees, and they're too expensive and it takes too long to grow them, so this will protect the bark until they get mature enough. Okay, we're getting that roof closer to being finished. This was oil-based, so there was quite a bit of drying time involved too. And looking down the hill at the project site, as I said, this was August, September, so it was very hot and very dry. You can see the grass doesn't look too good. And there's the damage we did to the lawn, dragging that pallet down through there. And a couple more sections up on top to be done. Here they are after they've been stained. I really love that color. It's really beautiful in my opinion. And just showing the site, those buckets really came in handy. Still have the plastic up, protecting everything until we're ready to put the roof up. Still don't have the bottom rail in place completely. Okay, the plastic's down, all the rails in. I should just about be ready for the roof at this point in time. This is where I had to bring some help in. Those roof sections are just too big, too heavy, too bulky, and there's just no way I could do that by myself, so my brother came in to save the day. You also see how those 2 trees are nicely placed on either side. The tractor was also a lifesaver, bringing material down there, leveling out the ground. Okay, the roof has started to go in. Basically, we're using this these two 2x4s here to hold the section up, and you just put them in one section at a time, bolt them or screw them to each other. You get C-clamps. It was pretty slow moving. It took us about a day to get the first tier up. Coming around. Here's the last piece to go. That was, of course, the hardest one to get everything to line up, get that to fit. We actually had a problem where the cedar was on top wasn't trimmed right, so we had to get up there and trim it off a little bit so that the pieces of 2x6 would fit together snugly. Here's my bro taking a cigarette break. Got that last piece up there. And we got this little separator piece up. It's a good solid day's work. Starting to come together pretty nicely now. Still have the plastic down to protect the decking. And there's just a shot at night with the light from the inside. And there is everything with all the roof up, minus the pagoda. We were too busy getting pictures during the process. Looking pretty good there. Starting to lay the plants out for the landscaping. I just want to get this all done at once, have nothing left over. Also trying to dig this landing out here. As you can see, we got some pretty heavy hard clay to get through. Essentially, when the house was dug, or the basement was dug for the house, all the fill was taken and pushed down on this hill. And there I've got the retaining wall blocks I'm willing to use to do this concrete landing. It was late fall, so all those plants came from Lowe's. Most of them were on sale for half off, so it was good timing there. So you're talking $25 a plant times 16. It adds up pretty quickly. The construction stakes were set about 5 feet out from the perimeter of the gazebo. That's where the outside of the landscape is going to be. Wanted to make sure those plants had plenty of space to mature nicely without crowding the gazebo itself. Everything's starting to come together. Here I've got a mock-up laid out for what that iron's going to look like, using these concrete blocks to form a frame, and then just using some pavers to fill in the center. And things coming together. Sort of get some grass down, put some straw down for that. Had to get it done because time is of the essence, time of year to get things done if you want it to grow that year. Okay, here we are putting this pier in. This was a ton of work. This probably took me, I'd say, 2 days when you put all the time together. The hardest part was getting that dug out so you had a nice flat surface for these blocks to sit on. And here you can see I'm just using construction adhesive. We're down about 3 layers, and they're 4 inches, so you got basically a foot deep. And then they're 8 feet. I'm sorry. 8 inches by 12 inches by 4 inches. Dimensions on the block. And also had to get it so that it lined up pretty smoothly, pretty evenly with the surface of the gazebo there. So it was a bit of a challenge to get it all lining up properly. And once again, the tractor comes in handy to move all this material down there. And using a base pea gravel that the bricks are going to sit on top of. And using the tractor here to sort of level the land out around the landing. So it's a nice, smooth, level access. Point the topsoil aside. And you can see this dark spot here. It's where the tree used to sit. Okay, I just used some of the rock I was using for the base to bring that up to grade a little bit higher for those bricks to sit in there. And on top of that, I put sand here. I'm putting the topsoil back. Actually started some mulching around the shed, or around the gazebo as well. And the plastic's off the deck. As you can see in the front here, I got a little bit of a bleed through here, so I have to get this white stain off the surface. A little bit of sandpaper took care of that. And the bricks are in place, and it's been sanded, so you can see what a nice finish that makes. And now you'll be able to walk right off the lawn, right onto the surface of the gazebo. Still don't have the ridge caps up on the roof, or the cupola. That came out very nicely. Pretty pleased with that. And now it's time to do the mulching. It's actually a lot of work to put that mulch down. I haven't mulched around the front here yet because I'm going to put some different plants in and I haven't found them. It's kind of tough to find what I want this late in the year. Here we are looking out off the landing from inside the gazebo up towards the house. Looking down the hill. Have the chairs up there. You can see it came together pretty nicely even though not quite 100% finished. Landscaping looks pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with that. Different angles. You can see the trees. And there I've got the pencil hollies in the front. And some little ryepeas around. And all the mulch is in. Still don't have the roof completely finished. And then here we go to this is actually in the winter time. I've got the ridge caps up, cupolas up. And you can see some ice. It just came together pretty nicely. I think it's very attractive. Here's a close-up picture of the ice on the roof. Frost. Then the next spring, the grass coming in nice and green. Some different artistic shots there. Right on the deck looking out the back. With the Adirondack chairs. You see how the Adirondack chairs are the same color as the accent pieces on the decking. And some different angles. Plants starting to grow up nicely. And that's it. I'm pretty happy with the project, and I hope you enjoyed this as well.